Mother here from HMP. Is history to repeat itself once more? That is the question I pose to you, the viewer. Follow along with me as we sort out this ugly mess. Why is it that some people just do not understand that history repeats itself over and over again? Were they sick? Or missed the history class in school? I could list other examples, but that's not this lesson. A little background to begin with, and then I'll end with a revelation that has a higher probability than anything Nostradamus ever uttered or penned, more so than any fear-mongering YouTuber has ever predicted, or more so than anything put down on parchment or uploaded to the internet. Let's look at a few facts. Current estimates are firearms in civilian possession in the United States is 433 million. Current U.S. population is 332 million people. That equates to 130 firearms per 100 people in the USA. I'm concerned by what I've been reading, hearing, and seeing on the Second Amendment. The only saving grace being the Supreme Court and its recent rulings. Numerous citizens are exercising their First Amendment rights by repeatedly calling for curbs on the Second Amendment. Yet they do not understand that the Second protects the First. Many are calling for outright bans and confiscations of firearms. This happened in Australia, New Zealand, happened in China. Who's next? Is Canada fully there yet? Seems with every shooting there sparks a new call to get rid of guns. Never do I hear, we need to check on people's mental health, nor do I hear the question, why did they? So let me pose this question. If a person grabs a gun, goes out and shoots a dozen people, or if a person drives his car at speed into a crowd, or if a person straps a bomb to themselves and sets off in a crowded venue, would you say that person has a mental health issue? I would. Back in my younger years, Bellevue Hospital in New York City was associated with its treatment of mentally ill patients. You younger folks only think of Bellevue as something in a Halloween movie. It's where Jason once lived. In the 1960s, the trend of deinstitutionalizing was well underway. In general, professional civil rights leaders and humanitarians saw the shift from institutional confinement to local care as the appropriate approach. Deinstitutionalization increased dramatically, and the average length of stay within mental institutions decreased by more than half. Many patients began to be placed in community care facilities instead of long-term care institutions. But I digress. Where were we? Oh yes. Many people seem to forget the Second Amendment is there to protect the other amendments and the Constitution in its entirety. It was not put there to give you freedom to go out and hunt deer. More specifically, the Second Amendment secures our freedoms of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and freedom of assembly. Our founding fathers realized an armed citizenry is essential to keep a tyrannical government at bay. Many of them even stated so in their writings. So we do know what the framers were thinking when the Constitution was written. They lived it. First-hand experience? Remember this. Were they not British subjects who wound up shooting British soldiers? Can we hope to learn from this? It is my hope. If you're wanting curbs on the Second Amendment, then prepare yourselves for curbs on the freedoms that you are now taking for granted. Expect your freedom of speech, press, travel, religion, and assembly to be curbed. Remember the Rona lockdowns. Do not give up rights and freedoms in the hope of trying to eliminate violence. Ben Franklin once said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. The bad guys do not play by the rules. They never have and they never will. Why limit the rights of the good guys to protect themselves? Well, most people fail to see, because maybe they're not taught it now, is the match that ignited America's war for independence. The match that created this country, the one you and I live in now, was not excessive taxes or the lack of representation, or trade restrictions, or the lack of trial by jury. It was not because tea was tossed overboard in a harbor. As important as these issues were, the match that ignited America's war for independence was attempted gun confiscation. Nothing less, nothing more. On April 18, 1775, British General Thomas Gage ordered the seizure of weapons and powder being stored in Concord, Massachusetts, about 20 miles from Boston. But he underestimated the courage and determination of the colonists. Patriot spies got wind of the plan. British Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith assembles the 700 regulars under his command to capture and destroy the military stores presumably hidden at Concord. When the King's troops depart Boston for Concord that evening, anti-British intelligence quickly informs Patriot leader Dr. Joseph Warren about their intentions. Warren sends for writers Paul Revere and William Dawes to spread the alarm. British troops march into the small town of Lexington at about 5 a.m. to find themselves faced by a militia company of more than 70 men led by Captain John Parker. When the vanguard of the British force rushes towards them across the town green, Parker immediately orders his company to disperse. At some point, a shot rings out and the nervous British soldiers fire a volley, killing 7 and mortally wounding 1 of the retreating militiamen. The British column moves on toward Concord, leaving the dead, wounded, and dying in their wake. A growing assembly of close to 400 militia from Concord and the surrounding towns gather on the high ground where they see smoke rising from Concord. Mistakenly assuming the redcoats are torching the town, the militia companies advance. As the Minutemen march down the hill, the British soldiers, intimidated by their numbers and orderly advance, retreat to the opposite shore and prepare to defend themselves. When the Minutemen comes across within range, the redcoats open fire, killing 2. Major Buttrick of Concord shouts, "For God's sake, fire!" And the Minutemen respond, killing 3 British soldiers and wounding 9 others. This volley is considered the shot heard around the world and sends the British troops retreating back to town. Again, were they not British subjects who wound up shooting British soldiers? So now, just think for a moment. You're living it now, enjoying all the fruits that come with all this freedom that others bled and died for. Yet, do you know any of the names of those 8 men that bled and died on Lexington Green that day? Their names are not lost to history. Ensign Robert Monroe, Isaac Muzzy, Samuel Hadley, John Brown, Jonas Parker, Jonathan Harrington, Caleb Harrington, Asahel Porter. Remember those names. These were the first to fall in the battle that sparked the beginning of our new country, with all its labor pains, and it was a bloody affair. The British Army's infantry was nicknamed Redcoats and sometimes called Devils by the colonists. Notice here that all throughout history, we put derogatory labels on things we don't like. It's much easier to not like them, despise them, to take aim and shoot a devil as it is to shoot another person. Adolf Hitler perfected this, labeling the Jews vermin, then took it to the extreme. In today's world, the right has been labeled by mainstream media and Democrats alike. Here are a few I've heard: zealot, nutjob, Nazi, bigot, racist, lemming, fascist, Republicans. The last one makes me chuckle a little. And finally, Hillary's fave, deplorables. Are you there yet? Have you noticed a theme? Are you having problems connecting the dots? Derogatory names and labels are placed on Americans by Americans. But my fear here is we have no interest in a vigorous debate where both sides discuss an issue. There is no doubt about it. Attempted gun confiscation ignited America's war for independence. If the federal government attempts to confiscate the guns of the American people, there would be a revolution in this country. That action would instantly create about 100 million felons. So please, for your sake, pay attention, become educated, have open, vigorous debates, and discuss the issues, or the shenanigans many people want may come to pass. And they may not want to, but graybeards could teach the lesson from 1775 if asked. I end my videos with excerpts from Robert Frost. I've got miles to go before I sleep. What this quote means to me is that I have a lot of information up here from many lessons learned over many years, all of it learned through the School of Hard Knocks and from others passed down from the previous generations. I am on a mission to pass on as much of this knowledge as I can before I make the long sleep. In conclusion, I will now make my first ever and hopefully only prediction. Should the U.S. government ask us, attempt to take, or pass laws stating we must relinquish our arms, the consequences of the events learned in 1775 will repeat itself. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share with those you love. I've got miles to go before I sleep.